Hello, everybody, and welcome back. This is the Creative Collaboration Show with Chuck Anderson, and this is the show where we serve business owners, entrepreneurs, and anyone on a journey to build wealth in whatever way you're doing that. And part of the journey of building a business is obviously to earn money. One of the things we're going to talk about today is how do you keep that money and how do you get it to grow for you? And so it's all well and good to earn money through your business, but then what do you do with it afterwards? So today's guest is an expert at that and has some really awesome advice for you. And some great strategies. Today, I am joined by Dr. Teresa R. Martin, Esquire, otherwise known as Dr. T, and we're going to have a lot of fun today. So, Teresa, welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. I love talking about this topic, so I'm excited.
Yeah. So I think a great place to start is let's tell your story. Let's go with tell everybody a little bit more about you, what you do, and how it came to be that you're doing this work.
Well, thank you for asking. And, for me, it was, go to school, get a good job. Nobody told me that 9/11 was going to happen and someone was going to run planes into buildings and then everything just go kaput. Right. So I saw my credit go from a 739 to a 437. Chuck, I couldn't go to the bank to get money without a mask and a gun. Okay. That's where the story started. Okay. So I started thinking, about how do I get from here? I love real estate. I come from a family of real estate investors, but like I mentioned, my credit was just not what it needed to be. So I basically had to kind of figure out how was I going to stay in the game. I was an attorney, I know how to do certain things, but that ESQ didn't matter. Right. And so that's how it really started for me. So through every single crisis, it seems like I had to do a pivot. So COVID wasn't anything new for me. So I, took that and I figured out how to do creative financing. I figured out how to get my credit back where it needed to be, but I did it the long way. Right. And so now I'm on a mission, to help people get from foreclosure to fiscally fabulous. Right. And so that's exactly what it is that I do. And I'm really excited about the work that I do and the people that I have come into contact that I'm able to serve. So that's the story in a nutshell.
Wow. And I bet that story is very relatable to a lot of people listening to the show. I know that I have survived the 439 credit score or something. It could have even been lower for all I know. And so you just can't get anything from anybody when your score is like that. And so to be able to go from there, turn things around, and like you said, live that fiscally fabulous lifestyle. I love the title of your book, which we're gonna definitely talk about later. That it's quite a journey, and getting there, getting to that point is one thing. What would you say was the turning point? What was the big turning point for you? It's like, hey, things went in a certain direction and you realize, okay, this is not working. I need to do something different. What was the turning point that kind of either led you to discover what you're doing or learn or get a better result? Like what was that point?
I think what made me turn everything around is because I had just built my home from ground up, right? And so what a terrible time. And so when you now I got mortgage to pay, I got kids to feed, I got stuff to do, right? And so there's no time to kind of wallow and things of that sort. But one of the things that I learned through this whole thing, Chuck, and I'll tell your audience out there, if you're really struggling and there's first you got to get over the shame. We as women, we hold a lot of, shame and stuff, right? You don't want people to know, your story, especially when you're coaches and trainers, right? So you're helping other people solve their problems, but yet back in the bush where nobody sees, we have to deal with our own. And so one of the things that your credit, I really realized that your credit tells that story. Right. And I always say it's, your social security number is how they find you. but your credit score is how they define you. And I never ever wanted people to define me any which way, because it wasn't my fault that the planes went to the thing and I lost everything and everything like that, right? So I read everything that I needed to read, and the traditional stuff out there really just didn't work. Okay, save. What if you have no money to save? I got no money to save. Okay, go work harder. I'm working hard. What am I going to do, right? Invest in real estate. Okay, I don't have any money to invest in real estate, right? So everything people were telling me, I couldn't really relate, except for the fact that when I graduated high school, my parents gave me a house for my graduation gift. And when my kids graduated, I gave them one. And so we kept that whole rich dad thing going on. And so for me, it was just a matter of really just trying to figure out, who could help me. And I went to every seminar. I went to, every boot camp I could think about just to get the information. Because remember, I still had law behind me. I still had some education. I still knew some stuff, right? And then I really realized that, okay, I can sell my knowledge. Hey, I can sell my knowledge. I went to school. I know how to do this. And then I just started mapping out the SOP. I didn't know it was SOPs at that time. Just started mapping out everything that I was doing. And then everything that I did, I then created that now into a course and stuff like that. So it really was really just listening, reading, and really just taking it in and being coachable. That's really, what helped me. And when you've gone from broke to joke, you know what I mean? It's kind of, people give you all this nice wisdom. It sounds nice at parties, but that's not the real world, right? And so I really was struggling, and I really had to figure out how to make ends meet. And I was one of the people who were actually hired to do the death certificates for those people who perished in 9/11. And so, it was really difficult for me seeing, other people going through that, because I survived and other people wasn't, that lucky. And so when you put things in perspective, you realize that I'm here for a reason. And this is what I'm going to do. And I'm never, ever going to look back. And I'm going to do everything in my power so people can follow my roadmap and they never have to worry about this again. And that's how I develop my programs, where you can apply for a loan and you'll never be denied again if you follow the steps that I give you. So that's how it came about, Chuck.
Amazing. And I love your energy around this. It's just fantastic. And so, I love that story because, again, being someone who was in that 400 area, I'm also someone who turned it around. I get it, because there's just so many, there's just no options. And then to decide, okay, yeah, it wasn't your fault that happened, but you know what? You took responsibility and you did something about it, and you created something amazing. So let's talk about that. So you created this work. Let's talk a little bit about who it's for. Like, who are you finding who are coming to you for help? What are you hearing from them in terms of the struggle that they are experiencing that you're able to help with?
Yeah, it's one of the things I'm finding is that it's entrepreneurs. My space is obviously serving, aspiring women entrepreneurs, coaches, consultants, real estate investors. And, that's who I'm usually, in that space. That's who I work with. And the reason why is because as entrepreneurs, we talk about, we're self-funding. Right. We're bootstrapping, right? We don't really, we're trying to figure it out. Sometimes, you're trying to get into a coaching program. You don't even have the money to get into a coaching program, hoping that they got a payment plan, but you're trying to get in. Right. And so that's who I'm serving right now. So women who are looking to start their own businesses, who need guidance to secure funding or business credit, or navigating, the complexity of entrepreneurship, legal entities and things of that sort. And then real estate investors who are looking for, ways that they can actually get into real estate or save the home that they're actually currently working in. So I'm in the B2B space. Anyone who is really looking to, try to separate their EIN from their social, separate themselves and not have to self-guarantee, in order to get funds so that they can build, grow, and sustain their business. That's who I serve.
Mm-hmm. So I bet that there's some of those people listening in right now, because it's such a common, such a common story. And like you said, we do fund ourselves. We are, in a sense, our own bank. And then, and through the grind, we're out there selling our services, selling our courses, selling our programs, earning what we can. And then, obviously keeping the cash flow going, but then also the bigger picture is, how do we keep it? How do we save? How do we build wealth in all of that, so that at the end of this, when we're done with our business, when we're done working, there's something we can look back and go, yeah, I built that. And there's, you're not just starting from, let's say ground zero again, which unfortunately does happen in entrepreneurship. So what is your advice to someone listening in right now who's at that stage, or whatever stage they're in? What is your advice in terms of, some of the things they need to start thinking about differently than perhaps they're doing right now?
Well, first thing I would say, well, get with Chuck, right? Because and I say that, and I say that, in reality, because some of the biggest expenses that we see as entrepreneurs and business owners is marketing, right? It's like huge. That's like a big thing. And so a lot of times, people are out there, before they're ready, going out, getting social media ads, and they're doing things before they're actually ready, to do these things. You don't really know who your real avatar is. You don't know who's listening. You don't really know what the metrics are saying. You're not really understanding how to read your numbers. Business, like, behind everything that we're doing, it's just bare bone business practices, right? So we think that we go out, we want to make 100K. So we know that we're going to sell, $1,000 product to 100 people. That's 100K. But what about the profit margin? What about, how much did it, cost you, in those expenses to actually get that? What is the real true value, customer value that you're putting, onto your clients and your customers? So I would say the advice that I really would have is, if you're not in a good coaching program and you didn't go to school for business, you really need to understand business and the foundations and fundamentals of business, because sometimes 1+1 is supposed to be 2, but sometimes it's minus because you haven't accounted for, the payment or the bill that you haven't paid, waiting for the client to pay you, right? So now you're in a negative because you're still trying to, figure it out. So it's a lot of things like that. So my advice is really to get into a good mentorship program, get into a good group coaching mastermind. I can't tell you enough, but partnerships and affiliates, is really, the key. That's why I came into your community, Chuck, is because, for me, it's just like, I don't understand anything about the marketing because I know how to do, the fulfillment. That's what I do, right? I'm a fulfillment specialist. You tell me this is your problem. You need this money. You need this. You need that. I can get it done. The marketing, not so much, but I am smart enough to know who to go to when I need help, right? And so that's the advice that I give everyone listening, that you really need to, take the chip off your shoulder. Let's get rid of the ego, okay? Because I always tell people, revenue feeds your ego, but profits feed your family. And we need to focus on profits. Okay. And so that's what we need to get, through to everyone, is that the revenue is the first step, but you also need to make sure that those profit margins are making sense, because if it doesn't make sense, it absolutely can't make dollars.
Yeah. If it can't make sense, then it absolutely can't make dollars. I love that. That's uh I've never heard that one before. I really like that one. See, it blew me away. So I love what you were just saying here about, my takeaway from one of the things you just said was not doing things alone.
Yes.
And, when I first started in business, I wish someone would have just, pulled me aside and slapped me around a little bit and said, hey, stop doing everything yourself. And we hear it all the time, like, I'm a solopreneur, or I'm a self-made millionaire, or whatever. And
No such thing. No such thing.
exactly, like, nobody's really self-made. Like, you went out there, it didn't involve customers, it didn't involve partners, it didn't involve employees, it didn't involve anyone. You're self-made. Yeah. So,
Exactly.
one of the themes that we like to talk about is collaboration,
Yes.
and then, working collaboratively with others. So, what's your philosophy on that? And in terms of when do you know when it's time to bring another piece in? Like there's the stuff that you do, and then when is it time to bring another piece in? And then what's your go-to place? Where do you start to go to look for what you need?
Yeah. So how do you know? You always know because when you're coming outside of your zone of genius,
Hmm.
you always know that it's time to go and collaborate, right? And so because you can't be everything to everyone, I have my zone of genius. Even though you may do something similar, it's not the same. You add another oomph to it, right? So I say I stay in my zone of genius. And, for me, I think that you need to hire or collaborate your weakness. My weakness is marketing. I know that. Okay. I don't like marketing. I like talking. I like speaking. I like engaging, right? But I don't really like the administrative task of marketing. Facebook ads and funnels. I don't even, it's just too much. It's overwhelming. And so I get away from my zone of genius when I'm focused on that, right? I don't need to do that. There's someone I can collaborate with that is their zone of genius. So I need to collaborate with someone who loves marketing and who knows that funnel stuff inside and out. And then I can then bring my zone of genius, and now we are like a 1-2 punch, right?
Hmm.
So that's what I would say about that. How you always know. Now, whether or not you want to admit it and you want to be this one pony show or whatever the case may be, but I say you serve your customer, you do your customers or potential customers a disservice when you're trying to be everything, because you're gonna miss something and you need to be their difference. But they may be coming to you with their last, and how dare you, really jeopardize their last because you're trying to do things that you really don't have the skill set to do, because you don't want to collaborate, or you don't want to, partner with someone, or you don't, it's not enough money on the table. How dare you, and so that's what I would say to that. And then where do you go? You go to communities. You go to, the community, you have a community, there's community, joint venture communities, affiliate, communities, partnership communities. And then just really just going in and identifying, with that vibe. Everybody's not going to mesh. Everyone's not for you. Just like every client is not my client, and I'm not their sheep. I tell people, if you don't like what I say, because I'm New York, yeah, I'm straight, no chaser, right? It's kind of hard. You can love me, don't love me. It is what it is. But if what I say, offends you, I'm offended that you're offended. That's what I tell my clients, right? And so all I'm doing is trying to share my wisdom, my knowledge. And, I'm like the, personal trainer. You may not want to do the extra push up. You might not want to hear that you need to do more, but I'm here to let you know that you do need to do more. And so for me, I think that you need to engage with people who are not your yes people and who will give you something straight, no chaser. That's a real accountability group. Okay. If your offers suck, if your talk tracks suck, you need to have a real accountability partner to say, okay, maybe you don't say suck, but maybe you say it needs a little work, maybe you say whatever. But if you're not that person who can like take criticism, then that's not someone who will be a great accountability partner for someone else, because if you can't take critiques, then you can't really give them. Right. And so I say that when you're looking for communities, it has to be a community that like, and trust, that you trust with your, inner inhibitions, right? You need to be able to be transparent, because that's the group that you are now growing with, so that when you go out into the marketplace, your stuff is shining, right? I tell my ladies, you want somebody to tell you your slip is hanging, or you got a little tissue on your shoe, right? You need somebody to be able to tell you that, right? And so that's how I know about, when it's time to collaborate, and where do I go to find collaboration partners or potential collaboration partnership.
Hmm. So now let's take this a step further. For the people who you work with, what is the point where they should not be trying to do this on their own, but they should be reaching out to you for help because you're the right person to collaborate with? What is that for them?
I think that looks like, if you're in a space where, you have limited access to funding, and, that you have been using your own funds, your savings or what have you, to fund your dreams, fund your deals. You may not know that your entity is a funding ready LLC, that you can actually get funding straight from your, LLC or your C Corp or S Corp, not partnerships, right? So, you want to make sure that if that's something where you are, that's when we should have a conversation so that I can do an assessment, because everything is like an assessment. I always tell people, when you start taking money from people without giving a full assessment, it's like a doctor, going into operation without doing the x-ray. I don't know what's wrong with you yet, right? So we kind of need to know where you are, so that you may not need my services, but you may need the services of one of my collaboration partners, right? You might need, some help from one of my affiliate partners or something like that. I may not be your girl yet. I might be your girl soon, but maybe not right now. So if you know that you're confused and overwhelmed about starting your business as far as the formation and entity is concerned, you limit it in your funding, you lack the financial education in the real estate space or the business space, and you lack support and guidance in that arena, I'm your girl.
I love that. So what is the first step into connecting with you? I know you have events, you have webinars, you have your book. What is the best first step for someone who's meeting you for the first time and they want to take the next step to learn more with you?
I think the first step is to either, jump on my calendar, on my website, enjoyyourlegacy.com, and let's just have a little conversation. No holds bar, it truly is a conversation, right? Because, it's just like the first date, right? And I always tell people, you got to have the first date before you have the second. Right. You never, ladies, you never want them to, kind of try to take you home on the first date. So, why are you trying to make that sale on the first date? Right. So, it's really, I call it the first date. And I think that's the first step into, coming into the space, because you may have something that I need. I may have something that you need. Let's have that first conversation. Let's have that first date, and see if we're a fit. So, go to my website, enjoyyourlegacy.com, and you can just schedule an appointment right there. You also get to see all the fine goodies and freebies that I have on the site. You get to know me a little bit better. I have a little video there so you can hear my story, just to see if this is something for you, because I'm not easy to take sometimes. And you got to make sure, that it's a good fit. But, I love on people. I love helping. I love serving. I am a servant leader, and so, this is what I do. So that's the first step, Chuck. Just come onto my website, see if I'm a fit for you, and let's have that first conversation, that first date.
Yeah, you know what, Teresa, I've had the privilege of spending some time with you multiple times over the last month or so. And look, nobody wants a coach who has low energy, so, you got to bring some energy and bring some fun to it. You and I have fun in our conversations. And, so I think, well, that's what's really wonderful about that. By the way, Teresa did mention her website address. If you're watching this on video, look beneath the video. There's a link there. So that's really convenient for you to go ahead and click that and visit her website. And if you're listening to this on a podcast, just click into that player, whether it be Apple or Spotify or whatever it is. And in the notes is the link to her website there as well. We're going to have some other links there of some of her other things. I know you've got the book, you've got an event, you've got a webinar. Let's talk a little bit about your book. I mean, because you've got that, tell everybody about that and yeah, what's
sure.
it called and what's it about and what are they going to learn?
And so I have a book. I have many books, but the book that I'm most proud about is my anthology book, which is Push Beyond Your Limits, teaching people how to become fiscally fabulous. And it's a nice anthology of some super fantastic co-authors inside that book. And it definitely is like telling their story, right? Because everybody started from somewhere. Some people have already achieved, what they are set out to achieve. Because my goal is for everyone to hit that 6 figures and then go beyond. right? So once you hit the six figures, that's enough to show you that you can do this, and you can pay expenses and things of that sort. And then you can now do, the acceleration and going into that, quarter million, and then the 500,000, and then that million, right? And so that's the whole goal, right? We got to start from somewhere. So Push Beyond Your Limits is just that. Push Beyond Your Limits. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it on my website. It's a free chapter. If you go on my website, you'll get a free chapter of that. And then also I have, my magazine, subscribe to that, or Fiscally Fabulous magazine. And that's also, helping you, just learn how to be fiscal and fabulous at the same time. And, and that's pretty much, what it is. And I have a super fantastic event. I'd be remiss if I don't tell people about, my 3-day event that I have every November. It's in New York, and it's a 3-day, 100% implementation event. You come, we're implementing. You're doing your social media. You're getting your entities formed. You're getting you're getting funding. You're getting access to funding. All of that, we're doing all of that. When you walk out on the 3 days, you already are walking out with your game plan, and things are already in motion for that. And on that Saturday, we have a purple carpet, because it has to be purple. It's a purple carpet affair, and paparazzi style, just like the Grammys. We're going to be doing it there, and that's our awards dinner. And it's just a fun time for everyone, and everything that you invest into the conference is being reinvested back into your business. That's the whole goal. So there's no selling from the stage. There's none of that. It's all about you, your mission, your vision, and implementing in those 3 days.
Fantastic. And do, again, check those notes beneath this video and in the podcast player, because we have links not only to the book, the magazine, the 3-day event that's coming up in November, and some regular preview webinars where you're going to get a chance to learn more about that and meet Teresa as well. All those links are right here beneath the video and in the podcast player. And I highly recommend that you go and check that out and go spend some time with Teresa. It's time well spent. Before I let you go, I wanted to ask you, because we were talking about your book, but such a big part of my journey as an entrepreneur has been learning from other people's books. And I started asking on the show a while back what people's favorite book was, and it's hard to pick just one favorite. I get that, but it's kind of turned into a bit of a social experiment now, where everyone's got their own favorite. I thought I was going to hear all the same books over and over and over again, but I didn't. It's like everybody has their own favorite. So my question for you, Teresa, if you could recommend just one must-read book that was, life-changing for you, made a big difference to you, that could potentially make a big difference in other people's lives as well, what book would you recommend?
I would say, hands down, it would be Cash Flow Quadrant by Robert Kiyosaki. So that book really changed the trajectory of my mindset, going from the employee to self-employed to business owner to investor. That left side of the quadrant where we have everybody stuck, and then moving over to that right side of the quadrant where we become business owners and running businesses and investing. Absolutely, no doubt, Cash Flow Quadrant. Everyone should read it.
Wow. I love so much that you have recommended Cash Flow Quadrant. I mean, I read that book. It was probably the second book of Kiyosaki's that I read. A lot of people say Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which was, a great introduction, but it didn't have quite the depth. Cash Flow Quadrant goes into depth.
Yeah.
And, I had the privilege of touring with the Rich Dad, Poor Dad seminars for a while, and got to speak on stage and all of that. And I saw, when people really learn the quadrant and everything you're just talking about, it absolutely changes everything. It changed for me. I thought I was a business owner. I was really just a self-employed person with, and sometimes we quit our job and we start our own thing, but you have more bosses as a self-employed person than you did when you had the job. And Absolutely. Then being able to move into a real business owner, having the systems and, in place for your business to run without you, and then having that money to invest into, places where your money will grow. It's so huge. I think when you get it, hindsight's 2020. It's like, yeah, I should have always got that. But it's not obvious to most people, right? And so
And
I love
until
that.
you start getting that mailbox check, Chuck, that mailbox check is real. When you can go away on vacation for 2 weeks and you come back and you got mailbox checks, woo, it changes everything. So yes, absolutely, it's phenomenal.
Absolutely. And one thing I can say is I probably earned money in all four quadrants. And I mean, I definitely have my favorite. I mean, it's got to be more, from that right side, and less from the left side. And that's a great reminder. And thank you for recommending that book. Well, I have put a link beneath this video to Cash Flow Quadrant and in the podcast show notes, so go check that out. It's one of Robert's better books, to be honest. It was one that was probably the most impactful for me as well. Teresa, thank you. This has been amazing. I love the journey. I love the energy. I think that we've shared a lot of great stuff here today, and I just want to also thank our audience. And look, hopefully this has been time well spent for you. And if we've inspired you to take even just one action towards your goal, towards your financial future, towards that thing in your business or your investment or whatever it is, then go and do that thing today. And if you don't know what that thing is, then go to Teresa's website, book a time to talk to her. She'll help you figure it out, and download the free chapter of her book and all the goodies that we talked about here today, because that was a great step if you don't already know what to do. And so, Teresa, if we were just going to leave our audience here with just one final piece of advice or words of wisdom, what would you leave them here with today?
The hardest step is the first one.
Mm.
The hardest step is the first one.
Yeah.
Just take that first step, whatever that step is for you. Just take it.
Just
It's
take it, and
greatness
it
on the
gets
other
easier.
side.
Yeah, and it gets easier from there, doesn't it? So
Absolutely.
great words to end this episode by. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being such an amazing guest. And to our audience, thank you for tuning in. Hopefully this has been a great time spent for you. This has been the Creative Collaboration Show. I'm Chuck Anderson. Please join me for the next one, and go click on those links, everybody. And in the meantime, keep moving forward. Never ever give up on your big dream, your goal, your business, whatever it is. There's a solution to every problem, and we're going to bring you even more of these solutions. So go connect with us, connect with Teresa, and keep moving forward. We'll see you on the next one, everybody. Thank you.